Here's a truth that no one's telling you. Men don't fall in love the way women do. And if you keep expecting them to, you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. Most people think love is a spark, a magical moment, instant chemistry, fireworks. But for men, love isn't a moment, it's a process, and it doesn't begin when you think it does. In fact, research shows that for most men, emotional connection builds after certain key triggers are met, not before. That's why you might feel like everything is going well and then suddenly he pulls away. He's not confused, he's not scared, he's just not there yet. Here's the shocking part. Men can be physically attracted, deeply engaged, even consistent in communication, and still not be in love. Because for men, love has a gatekeeper, emotional safety, and until that door opens, nothing else matters. In this video, we're going to break down the exact moment when a man truly begins to fall, what triggers that emotional shift, why timing is more important than intensity, and how you can avoid chasing a connection that isn't even real yet. So if you've ever asked yourself, why does he act like he cares but still won't commit? This video will give you the answer. Stick around, because what you learn in the next 30 minutes might explain every failed relationship you've ever had. If you want to understand how men fall in love, you have to stop thinking about emotions the way you experience them and start looking at how men are wired to process emotions in the first place. From a young age, most men are taught directly or indirectly that vulnerability is weakness. They're told to man up, stay in control, don't get too emotional. What happens? They learn to compartmentalize. They separate emotion from logic, desire from vulnerability, connection from risk. It's not that men don't feel deeply. They do, but the way they access those feelings is completely different from women. A man can be attracted, even attached, but still emotionally guarded. Why? Because love requires a sense of safety. And for a man, emotional safety isn't created by how beautiful you are, how available you are, or even how much fun you have together. It's created through consistency, respect, and most importantly, the freedom to be himself without judgment. Here's something crucial. Men fall in love in silence. They process internally. It's not dramatic. There's no grand emotional reveal. Often the moment a man realizes he's in love is so quiet, he doesn't even recognize it right away. It shows up in actions, in how he protects your time, how he remembers the little things, how he starts prioritizing your happiness without needing a reason. And because of this, if you're only watching for romantic gestures or declarations, you'll miss the deeper signs. Most women expect love to look like the movies, but for men, love often looks like subtle consistency. This is why so many relationships feel one-sided. A woman gives, nurtures, expresses, and waits for the same in return. But the man, he might be processing the entire relationship mentally, watching to see if he can trust you with his heart before he ever opens it. Understanding male psychology isn't about playing games or manipulation. It's about meeting him where he is, not where you want him to be. Once you see how men really operate emotionally, everything changes. You stop chasing clarity because suddenly his behavior makes sense. And when it does, that's when the real connection begins. We've all heard it. When you know that love is supposed to strike like lightning. Fast, powerful, undeniable. Movies, books, and pop culture have sold us this fantasy for decades. And while it feels romantic, the truth is this idea has caused more confusion, heartbreak, and mismatched expectations than almost anything else in modern dating. The idea of instant love, love at first sight, is seductive because it removes uncertainty. You meet someone, sparks fly, and suddenly it just feels right. But here's the problem. What we often mistake for love is actually attraction, infatuation, or chemistry. And none of those are bad, but they are not the same as love. For men especially, instant chemistry is often physical, not emotional. A man can be completely drawn to you, intrigued, excited, even obsessed in the early stages, but that doesn't mean he's in love. It means he's stimulated. And if you interpret that early intensity as deep emotional connection, you might find yourself investing way too much, way too soon in something that hasn't even rooted itself yet. Real love takes time, it takes exposure, shared experiences, emotional trust, and space to reveal vulnerabilities. And most importantly, it requires consistency over time. That's something instant attraction can't provide. The myth of instant love also creates false panic. If someone doesn't feel that spark right away, people assume it's not meant to be. But the truth is, many deep lasting relationships don't start with fireworks. They build slowly, and that slow build is often what allows real intimacy to grow. Men in particular are more likely to develop feelings gradually, often without realizing it until much later. It's not that they're emotionally unavailable. It's that their version of falling in love doesn't follow the dramatic script we've been taught to expect. So no, real love isn't instant, it's earned, it's revealed. And it requires more than just chemistry. It demands presence, patience, and emotional maturity. When you let go of the myth, you stop chasing feelings and start recognizing substance. And that's when everything starts to shift in your favor. Here's a hard truth. Most people don't want to admit a lot of relationships fail before they even have the chance to become real love. Not because the connection wasn't strong, but because the emotional foundation was never built. In the early stages of dating, most people are wearing masks, not out of deceit, but out of habit. You're putting your best self forward. You're trying to impress. You're filtering your thoughts, playing it safe, avoiding anything that might feel too much or too soon. The problem is when two people are focused on being liked more than being known, true connection never has room to grow. For men, this issue shows up in a very specific way. Because emotional vulnerability is often unfamiliar or uncomfortable, many men approach relationships with a mix of hope and hesitation. They want connection, but they're cautious, watching, testing, protecting themselves. And if that emotional safety isn't there early on, they detach without even realizing it. They might keep seeing you, but their heart never enters the room. Most women, on the other hand, tend to connect emotionally first and look for confirmation later. This mismatch is why so many relationships feel unbalanced in the beginning. One person is emotionally invested while the other is still evaluating whether they can be. And this is where things start to unravel. Not because either person is wrong, but because no one is creating the conditions for love to grow. People rush to define the relationship, to seek validation, to lock it down before any real depth has formed. And in doing so, they kill the curiosity. They interrupt the natural flow of connection. They turn potential intimacy into pressure. Love doesn't thrive under pressure, it thrives under presence. And most relationships fail not from lack of interest, but from lack of emotional readiness. If you don't allow space for real emotions to surface, if you don't give each other time to feel safe, to be seen, to be understood, love won't happen. Not because it couldn't, but because it never got the chance. And that's the mistake most people never realize they're making until it's too late. There's a moment in every man's emotional journey where something shifts, and it's almost never the moment you expect. It's not when you dress your best. It's not after a perfect date. It's not even when you say all the right things. What actually changes everything is a single emotional trigger. The moment he feels safe enough to let his guard down. This is what most people overlook. Women often express love through connection and communication, but men fall in love through a sense of emotional security. When a man realizes that he can be fully himself, no ego, no performance, no pressure, and still feel accepted, something powerful happens. That's when he starts to let you in. Not just into his life, but into the parts of himself he doesn't show the world. It's not about the surface level stuff. It's about the energy you bring when he opens up. Do you listen without judgment? Do you hold space when he's unsure of himself? Do you offer connection, not correction? Because here's the truth, men are constantly measuring whether emotional intimacy is worth the risk. Most have been taught that their feelings make them weak, so they hide them, suppress them, or only reveal them in small doses. But the moment he sees that you can handle his truth, not just his charm, that's the trigger. And once that happens, everything changes. He starts showing up differently. He prioritizes you not out of obligation, but from genuine emotional investment. He begins to think long term. He starts imagining a future, not just dates, but depth. And you'll notice the difference. His energy becomes more consistent. His words align with his actions. He doesn't just show interest, he shows intention. That moment, that emotional opening is when love begins. Not infatuation, not obsession, but real rooted connection. If you miss that window, if you try to force love before that trigger flips, the relationship stays shallow. But when you understand it and create space for it to happen naturally, you unlock something rare. A man who feels safe enough to fall fully without fear. Saying, "I love you" is one of the most emotionally loaded moments in any relationship. And while it may feel like the ultimate step toward intimacy, the timing of those 3 words can make or break everything. What most people don't realize is that saying it too soon or for the wrong reasons doesn't build connection, it creates pressure. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of people say "I love you" not because they're overflowing with emotion, but because they want reassurance. They say it hoping to hear it back, to seal the deal, to confirm that they're not alone in what they're feeling. But love isn't a tactic, it's a reflection of something already built. For men in particular, those words carry a different kind of weight. Many men process their emotions more slowly. They might be falling in love, but still figuring out how to articulate it. When "I love you" is dropped too early, it can corner them emotionally. Instead of feeling drawn closer, they may feel like they're being asked to step into something they're not ready for yet. And instead of intimacy, you get distance. The wrong time to say "I love you" is when you're unsure of the emotional foundation. When things are still new, when he hasn't let his guard down, when he hasn't shown you consistency or vulnerability. If you say it during the high of passion or infatuation, in that honeymoon rush, it may feel powerful in the moment, but it doesn't always land the way you think it will. Because love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, a commitment, and a reflection of emotional trust. And here's what often happens. If you say it first and he's not ready, you might get a polite smile, an awkward pause, or worse, a forced "I love you too" that doesn't feel genuine. And after that, something shifts. You feel exposed. He feels pressure. The dynamic changes, not because love isn't possible, but because the timing interrupted the emotional process. Real love needs space to reveal itself. If you wait, not out of fear, but out of respect for the relationship's pace, when those words do come, they'll be undeniable. They'll be backed by action, presence, and emotional depth. Not just a feeling, but a knowing. Saying "I love you" should never be a test, a plea, or a strategy. It should be a reflection of something that's already alive and mutual, even if unspoken. The right time to say it isn't when you're feeling the most emotional. It's when you both feel emotionally safe. That's when those three words don't just land, they resonate. So before you say it, ask yourself, am I saying this to connect or to be validated? The difference will tell you whether it's love or just longing. Let's bring this to life with some real-world moments. The ones that don't look like fairy tales, but actually mark the beginning of real lasting love. Take David and Alyssa. They'd been dating for a few months. Fun weekends, deep conversations, and clear chemistry. But David wasn't opening up emotionally. He was present but guarded. One night, they were driving home and Alyssa casually mentioned something about childhood, a memory involving her father's absence. Without thinking, David shared something deeply personal about his own family, something he'd never said out loud to anyone he was dating. That was the moment he realized, she makes me feel safe enough to tell the truth. That night had no big gestures, no declarations, but that was the beginning of love. Not instant, but undeniable. Or consider Chris and Maya. They dated long distance for a while, full of calls and late night texts, but things stayed surface level. One weekend, Maya came to visit and she got sick. Food poisoning, completely miserable. Not exactly the romantic weekend either of them imagined, but Chris didn't flinch. He brought her suit, changed her sheets, stayed up with her through the night. He didn't try to impress her, he just showed up. Later, he admitted to a friend, "That weekend made me realize I cared way deeper than I thought. I didn't want to impress her, I just wanted to take care of her." That's when love became real. Or how about Jenna and Marcus? She always assumed love would come through grand gestures, roses, surprises, fireworks. But one day after a stressful work week, Marcus simply told her, "You don't have to be strong with me all the time. No performance, no pressure, just presence." That one sentence made her feel seen in a way no one else had ever done. And it was then that she realized this is what love really feels like. Love rarely begins with dramatic moments. It begins quietly in vulnerability, in patience, in emotional safety. Those are the moments people overlook, but they're the ones that matter most. Emotional connection doesn't happen in men the way most people think. It's not a single lightning bolt moment. It's more like building a puzzle slowly, piece by piece, with each experience adding another layer of trust. And here's what's often misunderstood. Men don't connect emotionally through words first. They connect through experiences. For many women, emotional connection comes through conversation. Talking builds closeness. Expressing feelings brings a sense of intimacy. But for men, it's often the shared moments, the time spent side by side, the reliability, the comfort of someone being there without demanding too much that start to build that internal sense of safety. A man might not say, "I'm getting attached," but you'll notice small shifts. He starts letting you into his world, introduces you to friends, includes you in his routines, starts talking about the future with you in it. These aren't just casual actions. For men, these are emotional markers. Every step toward vulnerability is a test. Can I trust her with more of me? Will she respect it or use it against me? Here's something else people often miss. Emotional connection in men grows in silence. It doesn't always come with long talks or tearful confessions. Sometimes it shows up in how he listens more closely, in how he starts remembering the small things you say, in how protective he becomes of your time and energy. It might seem subtle, but for him, these are big shifts. Men build emotional bonds by observing how you show up, especially when things aren't going perfectly. Consistency matters more than intensity. He doesn't need grand romantic gestures. He needs to feel like you're stable, emotionally grounded, and not trying to force anything. When he feels he can be himself without being judged, corrected, or pushed into emotional spaces he's not ready for, that's when connection deepens. And here's the surprising part. Once that bond is formed, it's strong. Men don't form deep emotional ties lightly, but when they do, it's not surface level. It's rooted, and it shows up not in what they say, but in how they act. He starts showing up when it matters. He remembers what's important to you. He chooses you not because he needs to, but because it feels right. Understanding how emotional connection forms in men means stepping away from assumptions. It means giving space while staying emotionally available. It means knowing that sometimes silence isn't disinterest, it's processing. And the more you respect that process, the more room love has to grow. So if you're wondering where you stand with a man, don't just listen to his words. Watch how he builds the puzzle, because if he's placing the pieces even slowly, you're already in the frame. Not every man announces when he's falling for someone. In fact, most won't say a word, not until they're sure, not until they feel safe, and not until they've emotionally processed what's happening. But that doesn't mean the signs aren't there. You just have to know how to read them. One of the first signs is his time becomes intentional.